The day my wife passed away happened to be our 50th wedding anniversary. When we were young, I was caught up in starting my business and was always running around, leaving my wife overworked. She miscarried twice, and after that, she couldn't have kids. I was heartbroken, so I promised her we'd never have children. Once my business was stable, I quit to become a full-time stay-at-home husband, and we raised an adopted child as our own. It wasn't until the day she died that I discovered her so-called miscarriages were actually abortions. 40 years prior, during her time overseas, she had a child with her first love. That child turned out to be our adopted son, Jason, whom I raised with my own hands. Upon learning the truth, I had a heart attack and died on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, it was the day my wife came home with Jason. Jason, say, "Daddy, this is your home now." I was stunned at seeing my wife Lucy's youthful face, and it took me a moment to realize I was reborn. Lucy thought my confusion meant I didn't want Jason. She frowned. "Vincent, what's with the look? You're still upset I couldn't have kids. Huh? Do you think adopted kids are less than biological ones? Have you forgotten that I miscarried twice for you?" Watching her talk, I calmly said, "If I remember right, you went abroad 5 years ago. If you got pregnant then, the kid would be 4 or 5 now." Lucy licked her lips nervously but stood her ground. "You're just seeing things, corrupting your mind. I was out there making money for us. Not everyone can afford to laze around like you. If that's how you feel, we might as well divorce." I chuckled. "Lucy, I don't know about my heart, but I know for sure yours is corrupt." Jason started crying, but I just pulled up a chair to watch the scene unfold. I didn't experience this in my previous life. Lucy, this eloquent, who knew? Back then, I accepted Jason right away when Lucy brought him home and cared for him for decades because I loved her and was willing to accept everything she did. She started volunteering at an orphanage, and I thought she was compensating for her inability to have kids, so I supported her even more. Who knew her acts of goodness were fake? Her purpose was simply to see Jason openly. When I first saw them, I commented how their eyes were extraordinarily similar, calling it fate. Now I realize everything was a lie. I put so much into Jason, but got nothing in return. Instead, I accelerated my own demise. After Lucy died, Jason and his biological dad Gary confronted me, spilling the truth only to get me to relinquish Lucy's ashes and hand over the company. They played me so well I had a heart attack and died. Now just expressing a bit of restraint got me yelled at by Lucy. "Vincent, did you hear what I said? If you don't accept this son today, there's no point in continuing this." Lucy cried, and those sad eyes would have convinced me in my past life. But now, I smiled and said, "Fine." She sighed, "Good, you just had to argue." I shrugged, "Then let's break up, divorce." Lucy froze, incredulous. "Vincent, are you serious?" I nodded, as serious as a heart attack. Lucy looked at me, her tears gone. She looked exhausted. "Vincent, take back what you just said, and I'll ignore it this time. Mention divorce again and it's final. Begging won't help." Just as I was about to respond, the doorbell rang. Lucy shot me a look and went to open the door with Jason. "Lucy," Gary stood outside, smiling. "Gary," Lucy's eyes lit up. "What are you doing here?" I stood closer, arms crossed, observing her every move. In our past life, she invited friends over the day she brought Jason home, wanting him to fit in. But now, why does Lucy seem different? Is it possible she's been reborn too? The thought exploded in my mind, making me hyper-aware. "Lucy, congrats on becoming a mom. All the best, this little guy is adorable," friends chimed from behind Gary. "Lucy, aren't you the one who invited us to meet Jason? Did you forget?" one friend asked, seeing the child crying. Gary tenderly wiped Jason's tears. Jason looked at him intently, held out his hand, and said, "Daddy," hugged Jason. Gary seemed startled at being called Daddy, and immediately glanced at me. "Hey, little guy, you've got the wrong dad. That handsome fella's your dad. Right behind you," a friend teased, pointing at me. Lucy let out an awkward laugh, glancing at me, trying to smooth things over. "The kid's young. It's normal for him to mistake people, right? He's just being a kid." I watched everything unfold without getting involved, But inside, I couldn't help but smirk coldly. Jason's just 5, an age where he soaks up everything adults say. There were other men among the friends gathered, yet he only called Gary Dad. It seemed like Lucy and Gary had been secretly coaching him to do that. The room felt tense. Lucy shot me a warning look, ushering everyone into the living room and then ordering me to make some tea. I glanced at her, unfazed. The guests waved her over to the couch while she glared at me, but said nothing more. They gathered around Jason, showering him with gifts and red envelopes. I sat off to the side, quietly playing on my phone, though my mind was racing. Seeing the unmistakable flirty glances Lucy threw at Gary, I was certain she had come back from the past. The last time this happened, Lucy barely interacted with Gary to avoid any gossip, leading our mutual friends to think there was some issue between them. Moreover, during the last days of her illness, the virus outbreak kept Gary stranded abroad, and she never got to see him one last time. Maybe that's why she was so bold in looking at him now. But if she loved Gary so much, why did she refuse to divorce? And why didn't Gary take care of Jason, leaving him in an orphanage instead? Vincent, come here for a second. Lost in my thoughts, I barely noticed Lucy had come over, clutching my sleeve tightly. I glanced down at her hand and reluctantly followed her. Seeing I didn't make a scene in front of friends, she seemed to relax a bit. Once we were in the kitchen with the door closed, I brushed off her grip with annoyance. Lucy let out a sharp tsk and almost spat out, "Vincent, what is your problem? Are you trying to embarrass me on purpose? Just because little Jason accidentally called Gary Dad? Do you have to be so petty?" I put away my phone, looked her in the eye and said with certainty, "Yes. In the past, our friends would have dined at our house, partying until late. Back then, I played the perfect host. But this time, my distant demeanor made them uneasy, and they quickly found reasons to leave." Jason peeked at me from beside the couch, his big eyes full of fear. I pretended not to notice, keeping my attention on my phone. When Lucy returned from seeing our friends out, she saw this and immediately shielded Jason, eyes glaring with rage. "Vincent, are you sick? Bullying a child like this? Who's sick here? I'm sitting far from him. How am I bullying him? Am I doing it with my mind?" Lucy was taken aback, her expression darkening as she scooped up Jason and stormed upstairs. The door slam reverberated through the dining room where I sat, her fury palpable. How funny she thought I'd grovel like I did before. Dream on. Knowing Lucy's comeback from the past made me more cautious. Thinking back to the past, the day after Jason arrived, Lucy landed a massive contract, skyrocketing the company's profits and her worth. As soon as she pocketed the bonus, she gifted Jason an entire shopping street and bought Gary a limited edition sports car. Yet not a cent was spent on me. I only learned about it from friends years later. Back then, she justified it by saying the deal was secured through Gary's connections, so rewarding him was only fair. And since Jason was part of our family now, he deserved what other kids had. I was annoyed but tried to convince myself she was right. "Sure, Lucy, you decide everything in the house." Now, as I remember, she simply took advantage of my kindness, relying on my willingness to put her first. This deal, actually brokered by my father, had nothing to do with Gary. My dad and I were estranged due to his abandonment, but he chose to help me from a distance. I only discovered this much later, but I doubt Lucy ever knew. She brazenly lied without realizing the truth. I won't let them bully me again. Determined, I dialed a number before grabbing my car keys and heading to a coffee shop I remembered. The person was waiting by the window. When I arrived, Lily raised her coffee cup in greeting. After parking, I took a deep breath before entering. The doorbell jingled as I walked in, sunlight spilling over Lily's face, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. A soothing piano piece played in the background, making the setting feel even more relaxing. The calm atmosphere instantly put me at ease. Breaking the silence, I started, "Your habits haven't changed, have they? Still hanging out at the cafe we used to pass on our way to school? Not hiding from me anymore? Huh? Why did you suddenly decide to call?" Lily pushed a latte towards me and locked eyes with me. Taking a sip, I found the taste familiar, just like it was back in the day. That eased the awkwardness a bit. Can you help me get detailed info on Gary? I laid out all my reasons for wanting to investigate him. Lily leaned back in her seat, listening quietly. After I finished, she finally spoke. I'll help you, but what's in it for me? Lily was sort of my first love. We spent so much time together back then that she developed feelings for me, but I wasn't interested. Even after several rejections, she kept coming back, which frustrated me. After my mom passed, I moved out of our old house to deliberately cut ties with her. It's been years, and we haven't kept in touch. Later on, Lily's career took off. I'd run into her a few times while accompanying Lucy for business, but neither of us felt like catching up. Her eyes would linger on me but dart away when I looked back. I placed my hands on the table and calmly looked at her. What do you want? She raised an eyebrow. Anything? I nodded, as long as I can afford it. Lily's eyes sparkled, and she smiled slightly. You can afford it. I'll help you out first, then ask for my payment once it's done. What she said was vague, and although I felt uneasy about it, I had few choices left. I hadn't worked in years, had little savings, and fewer connections. Lily was the only person I could think of who might help. After saying goodbye to Lily, I drove straight to the company. I figured Lucy would be at home with the kids, but surprisingly, I ran into her at the office. Even through the closed office door, I could hear the heavy breathing inside. Her assistant, blushing like crazy, was pretending to be super busy in the corner to avoid suspicion. I leaned against the door, waiting quietly. After half an hour, the sounds finally stopped. Lucy, looking flustered, opened the door and tensed up when she saw me. Vincent, what are you doing at the office? Seeing my calm expression, her tone switched. Did you ask around my schedule? Vincent, always so stubborn. Why are you here? It's pathetic. I glanced at Gary, who also seemed quite satisfied, and slowly said, Lucy, you've got something in your teeth. Didn't he help you with that? Her face changed suddenly. She covered her mouth and ran to the bathroom. Gary glared at me and followed her. Freed from the awkward scene, I managed to locate a contact of my dad's assistant in Lucy's office and snapped a picture. Just as I was about to leave, Lucy stormed over. Vincent, stop right there. She tried to slap me, but I grabbed her wrist and warned, touch me again, and I won't hold back. Gary pulled her close, and both glared at me like angry snakes ready to strike. The tense scene broke only when her assistant brought her a phone. Lucy took it, immediately putting on a smile. Hello, Leo. I watched her walk back into her office, and I knew what was going on. Leo, my dad's assistant, would still be handing Lucy that life-changing project in this life as well. Thinking over my options, I left the company quickly. Expecting Lucy to be done with her call, I dialed the number I'd photographed, making sure to identify myself before Leo could hang up. There was a pause, and then he gave me a location to meet right away. His respectful tone told me he knew who I really was. Arriving at the spot, the serene setting gave me chills. A classic garden-style place, completely authentic. I couldn't help but think how carefree money makes people. Leo welcomed me and led me to a pavilion in the center of the lake. My eyes fell on the elderly man sitting with his back to me. When Leo announced my arrival, the man tensed up, his trembling hand spilling tea from the pot. Once Leo left, he awkwardly invited me to sit down. Seated, I openly studied him. He wasn't the same dull and ordinary man I remembered. Wealth, after all, nourishes people in ways. With a steady hand now, he poured tea for me. Have some, Vincent. Is this year's fresh tea? Don't call me that, I snapped, brushing the cup away, letting it shatter against the ground. Eyes lowered, he chuckled bitterly. I understand you can't forgive me. You left us for a mistress, stole everything valuable, leaving my mom to die without treatment when I was in high school. I shouted, venting my deep-seated anger from past and present lives. You have a new family. Why are you here? She's gone. Took off with a younger man after getting what she wanted. He poured another cup, adding with self-derision, I found out recently I can't have kids anymore. So you remembered me to gain forgiveness? For me to take care of you in the end? Do you deserve that? I scorned. No. His face full of agony. I felt satisfied. A cheater deserves no happy ending. Done rehashing the past, I cut to the chase. I don't want Lucy or her business. The project you planned for her can stop. He nodded, pouring tea again. Then give it to Lily. Have you been following me? I stood, my gaze icy on him. Vincent, don't be mad. I just wanted to see you're okay. Everything I own will be yours eventually. Do as you wish. Not interested. Angry, I left. After driving aimlessly around town, I headed back home. Lucy was feeding Jason at the table. Seeing me, her previously gentle expression vanished, replaced with sarcasm. Guess you know when to come home, just in time for dinner. I ignored her, going straight to the kitchen to make some noodles. After dinner, Lucy got another call from Leo. Quick to leave. She dumped Jason on me. Vincent, I have to go out. You better take care of Jason. I continued eating my noodles slowly, not even lifting my head. Lucy thought I agreed with her and left with her bag. I took my time eating, then dropped Jason back at the orphanage. When the headmaster saw Jason, he was shocked and was about to ask me something, but I turned around and walked away. Whoever's kid it is, they should take care of them. I'm no saint. Afterward, I picked up Lily and headed to the negotiation bureau. When Lucy saw me, her eyes were like daggers. Vincent, what are you doing here? Lily followed me in and sweetly called me Father. Lucy's face darkened, her eyes unreadable. Vincent, why are you with Lily? Where's my son? Sent him to the orphanage, I answered slowly, sitting down. Lucy was about to press the issue, but my father's gaze and Leo's cold voice cut her off. Lucy, if you're busy, you can leave. Lucy simmered, sitting back down, her eyes darting between Lily and me. Lily kept smiling, deliberately cozying up to me. I knew she was trying to provoke Lucy, so I didn't stop her. Lily and Lucy's companies are rivals, always clashing over business. Tonight's party was to announce that our project was getting transferred to Lily's company. Lucy seethed, her face turning red, but she held back. It wasn't until the party ended that she cornered Leo to ask what was going on. Leo looked my way, saw I wasn't going to speak, then chose his words carefully. It's the boss's decision. Lucy should understand I'm just an employee too. Who am I to question the boss? Losing billions like that, Lucy couldn't keep her cool and stormed off, cursing as she passed me. Useless. Mr. Vincent, the assistant, followed Lucy with a gift box. The boss knows it's your birthday. Here's a gift for you. Opening the box, a limited edition black card caught Lucy's eye, making her pause with greed. Lily then handed me a limited edition watch. For you, she said. I thanked her and was about to take it. She held it up, looking at me gently. Let me put it on for you. I glanced at Lucy's dark expression and smiled, extending my arm. Sure, thanks. The watch's simple face was eye-catching, understated but obviously pricey. The assistant chimed in, complimenting, Lily has great taste. Lily replied sweetly, Vincent's sophisticated enough to match it. We bantered while Lucy fumed, breathing heavily. She opened her mouth several times, but the assistant's presence made her swallow her words. Eventually, Lucy couldn't hold it anymore, her voice cold. What's all this chatter about, Vincent? My father approached, cutting Lucy off once more, her face flushed with frustration. Lily couldn't help but laugh, teasing, Lucy, you look ill. Need an ambulance? Lucy, gritting her teeth, shot daggers at her before saying a quick goodbye to my father and storming off. After going downstairs, I realized Lucy hadn't left. She was waiting for me. Lily saw her and whispered, Want to see if your wife cares about you? Her warm breath made me uncomfortable, so I moved away. Boring, I replied. Lily whispered again, Am I that scary? Still want to know about Gary? I looked at her intuitively. You found out? Lucy saw me ignoring her and approached, her eyes burning with anger. Vincent, come with me. Her tone was demanding. I met her gaze calmly. What if I don't? Then I won't let you save face, she snapped. You dared to contact the boss behind my back, and they remembered your birthday? She reached out, palm up, demanding, Give me the black card. I couldn't be bothered to explain. Lily gave it to me as a birthday gift. I gifted her the card as thanks. Lily played with the card, smiling provokingly. I figured Lucy was eyeing that black card, so I put it with Lily's things, intending to return it to my father. Vincent, you... Lucy glared at me, seething. Can't you tell who your real wife is? Hanging with Lily? Are you cheating on me? Watch your mouth. Not everyone is like you, I retorted sharply, anger rising. Lucy, unable to respond, raised her hand to hit me. Lily coldly blocked it, swatting her hand away. Just then, Gary called. Lucy answered. Jason's wailing came through. Gary, take it easy, Lucy said, her anger replaced by worry, her eyes reddening. Gary's voice choked. Lucy, come quick. Vincent left Gary at the orphanage, and he's inconsolable. How could you be so heartless, Vincent? That's your what? I cut in. Get out, Vincent, Lucy shouted at me before soothing the father-son duo. Mom's coming right away. Gary, hang in there with Dad. Saying Dad already? I sneered. Not even pretending anymore? Lucy replied awkwardly, I don't understand what you're saying, then hurriedly drove away. Lily patted my shoulder, teasing. Not sad she left? I brushed her hand away, indifferent, you're overthinking it. I drove Lily home, not in the mood to chat. So, I just turned on the radio. It was playing some parenting advice. I frowned and changed the station. Then, I ended up on a station with relationship advice. Whatever, shut it off. If you don't want to talk to me, then don't. Lily propped herself up against the car door and spoke. She was so blunt about it. I felt the air get more awkward. We drove all the way to her neighborhood before she finally spoke again. You and Lucy, things are weird between you two. Huh? I let out a sarcastic laugh. She went behind my back and had a kid with someone else. Remember that guy I asked you to look into? Once I figure out everything I can't wrap my head around, I'm divorcing her. Someone else's kid? That's rough, Lily said after a pause. Yeah, married for over a decade, gave everything, and this is how it ends, I replied. Changing the subject, I asked, so, what did you find out? I hadn't pushed Lucy about the divorce yet. I was suspicious, though. I thought Lucy and Gary might be up to something shady. In the past, I let her walk all over me because I was so into her. But given this second chance, I'm clearing out any obstacles that could trip me up. Gary's like a hidden bomb, and I need to figure out what he's up to before I can relax. Give me 2 more days. Gary's been living abroad, and I've asked some friends overseas to check on him. All right, thanks. By the time I got home, it was around 10 at night. As soon as I walked in, there was Lucy and her family, sitting on the couch waiting for me. I noticed Jason fiddling with an airplane model. I got a closer look and grabbed it from him instantly. Jason looked about ready to cry. Vincent, are you nuts? If you need help, go see a doctor. Fighting a kid over a toy plane? Lucy said, scooping him up and soothing him. Vincent, come on, he's just a 5-year-old. Gary chimed in, clearly annoyed. I checked out the model and said angrily, say whatever you want. If you like buying toys so much, then you go do it. But don't use my stuff to play the good guy. It's dirty to me. It's just a sentimental gift from my mom for my birthday when I was a kid. She worked so hard to raise me all by herself, never spending a dime on herself, and saved up everything for my gifts. I usually keep it in an acrylic box and never touch it. And you call it junk. Okay. I won't touch your stuff anymore, happy? Lucy snapped with irritation written all over her face. Gary and I are heading abroad for a bit. A project fell through, but Gary's got a connection for me. Jason's on you. Take care of him, don't you dare think about sending him back to the orphanage. Vincent, Jason's a good kid, don't go doing something irresponsible, Gary added, trying to be all parental. I rolled my eyes and carefully wiped the plane. Vincent, I'm talking to you. Lucy raised her voice, tired of my attitude. In the past, when Lucy signed a contract with the company, she traveled with Gary, saying that she needed to check out a foreign supplier, and Gary was heading back for work, so they'd go together. Not once did I stop to doubt her words and promise to take care of Jason. I don't babysit. If you're leaving for another country, take him with you. Or else, I'll send him back to the orphanage again. Lucy's face darkened. I didn't give her time to throw a fit and just headed upstairs to my room. The next day, in Lucy's absence, I turned the house upside down but didn't find anything out of the ordinary. In the evening, Lily called, saying she had some news. I drove over. Just as I got there, I saw Gary making out with some huge foreign woman. I froze and quickly hid beneath the trees. Lily knocked on my window, and I let her in. Did you see that? The large woman is Gary's wife. Her dad is a renowned artist abroad. Gary's actually doing leagues better overseas. Lily added. I didn't know Gary well but pieced together his story from Lucy before. He's not an artist, just a regular office guy. How could his work impress someone significant like that? Do you have pictures? I asked, puzzled. Lily handed me some photos and I froze. Those were my sketches, the ones I doodle for fun. I put 2 and 2 together. Lucy knew all about Gary. She was stealing my work to give to him, which explains his rise in the art circles. She's bound to get caught. Without her knowing, every single one of my drawings had her initials hidden in them, in a unique font I paid someone to design. Since she wasn't keen on divorcing, I figured I'd give her a little push. Now that you know, when will you divorce Lucy? Lily teased, lifting my chin. You promised me something, remember? She reminded me. I turned my head, avoiding her hint. Once I handle all this, the divorce is next. After that, I started watching Lucy's daily activities closely. When she and Gary went abroad, I followed them, though not on the same flight. Lily had given me the scoop on Gary's address and studio abroad, even wired me some cash. After a few days with no solid evidence, I hired a detective. Wasn't long before I got those can't-be-ignored pictures. Caught them red-handed, Lucy and Gary, messing around on someone else's bed. I thought money makes miracles happen. With evidence in hand, I headed to the artists' gathering where Gary was at the center stage, brandishing his work. Lucy gazed at him like he was the second coming. I, sitting at the back, just listened to his nonsense. Couldn't hold it in and laughed out loud. People turned to glower at me, and the look on Lucy's face, absolutely priceless. She anxiously pushed through the crowd and came up to me, grabbing my arm to drag me outside. Vincent, come with me outside first, let me explain. Explain what? I shook her off and glanced around at the paintings on the walls, speaking coolly. Explain how the paintings I made ended up on the walls of an international exhibit? I made sure to say it in my native language so everyone could understand. Lucy desperately tried to cover my mouth, but she wasn't tall enough, and I refused to cooperate. Right after I spoke, there were murmurs of surprise from everyone there as they all looked at the elderly man in the center of the first row. Gary too looked at the old man and then yelled in frustration, Vincent, don't make false accusations. I created these paintings myself. Really? I walked over and pointed at one of the paintings. If you want to prove your innocence, I'm not even asking you to create a new piece. Just write this signature right now. Sir, what do you think? Everyone's eyes were glued to the drama unfolding. The elderly man banged his cane on the ground and nodded for him to proceed. Lucy was at the back, looking pale as a ghost. Gary, with a wandering gaze, picked up the pen and tried writing on the paper multiple times, but finally threw the pen down and crouched, clutching his head, crying out in despair. Don't force me. Don't force me. I did create these paintings. I did it myself. I chuckled, picked up the pen, and effortlessly wrote the signature. At that moment, everyone realized Gary was just a plagiarist. Young artists who had never liked him but tolerated him for the old man's sake suddenly pounced on him. The old man lost face and wanted to blame me. Gary's wife grabbed my collar, and Lucy's face lit up as if I was about to get hit. In the midst of the chaos, Lily strolled in wearing high heels. If I remember correctly, this is still a society governed by law, isn't it? Exposed as a plagiarist, feeling humiliated you were about to gang up on someone. Seeing Lily, I was so emotional I almost cried. Lily gave me a reassuring smile, then continued, if everyone's not interested in plagiarism, maybe check these out. She tossed a stack of papers into the air, scattering them everywhere. Everyone picked one up, and in an instant, drew in a sharp breath, their eyes darting between Lucy and Gary with hinting glances. "Don't look. Just don't look," Lucy shouted desperately, to no avail. Someone even whistled at her. "Ma'am, did you know your son-in-law sneaked with another woman into your daughter's matrimonial bed? Bet you and your daughter didn't know." Lily paused, then added, "Oh, by the way, they even have a kid. His name's Jason, he's already 5. Jason, Gary, choosing that name shows how much the parents must love each other." Knowing the truth, Gary got beat almost senseless by his wife before leaving the gallery. Amid the chaos, I guarded Lily and stepped outside. Lucy cried and begged me to save her, to take her away, but I couldn't even spare her a glance. Later that night, I got a call from an overseas hospital. Lily came along when I went to the hospital. Lucy was swollen as a balloon, lying in a hospital bed. When she saw me, she tried to get up but was pressed back by a nurse. She reached out to me, crying and mumbling, "Vincent, let me explain. Gary and I really had nothing, he seduced me." I looked down at her, disgusted. "Seduced you? What's so irresistible about you? Look at yourself in the mirror if you dare. It's sickening. Vincent, you can't say that. You loved me the most, remember? Better off not mentioning the past. It riles me up like nothing else." I threw the divorce papers in her face and said with satisfaction, "Lucy, sign it. About you stealing my paintings, if you just sign this divorce agreement today, I won't press charges. Otherwise, get ready for jail." Lucy cried her heart out, shaking her head furiously. "One more thing, Lucy. That boss is my dad's company. Today I am making it clear, from now on you'll get no more projects, just wait for bankruptcy." After saying so, I ignored whatever reaction she had, determined to leave with Lily. A month later, Lucy returned from overseas, without Jason. Lily mentioned to me that Lucy had sent the child back to the orphanage. The director had thought Jason would have a good life, but seeing Lucy's faded interest after just a few days, angrily chased her out with a broom, saying he never wants to see her again. I just laughed it off. The first thing Lucy did when she got back was kneel before me, frantically admitting her mistakes, swearing for another chance. I said nothing, just pulled out my phone to call the police. Lucy was terrified, snatched my phone and hung up. Completely defeated, she agreed to compromise for her freedom. On the day we got the divorce certificate, the sky was clear and cloudless. Living through 2 lifetimes, for the first time, life felt this wonderful. Lily honked the car horn from a distance. I smiled, responding, "Don't rush, I'm coming." I tucked away the divorce certificate and jogged happily towards her. The car started, and Lucy faded from the rearview mirror. I turned away, smiling at Lily, "Lily, let's look forward to the rest of our lives together."